recording? Okay, it's recording. I like these laptops because they have a full keyboard except for the numbers, because you need the home key button at the end. So I was checking here the computer lab the last week, and I saw they have all of those keys. So you'll be using those to be able to select, more quickly and efficiently. And that's why sometimes Macs are difficult, because they don't have the same keys, and I don't know always the shortcuts. Or the stuff is not in the same place, the commands. But I've gotten better. Okay. All right, let me open this file. And integrity, anytime I switch screens for any reason, it puts a break in the video. So when you're watching the video at home, you don't have to watch the whole thing. It's going to be broken into a lot of different small videos, or you can watch the whole thing. So that way, let's say you want to review a concept, you can find it in all those little screens, so you can watch only that segment of the video. So so Excel for Finance, basics and some advanced functions. So what is Excel? It's a spreadsheet, and I found a couple of definitions. There's an accounting definition. It's a tabular worksheet with number of rows and columns. So you can do analysis, you can present financial statements, you can do analysis of data, numeric data, or the string data, text. You can merge text, you can find text, it can be a database as well. If you look at the computer definition, it's a software that allows you to enter numeric data, string data into rows and columns, and that's going to facilitate analysis, manipulation of data. You can input mathematical formulas. You can do charts and graphs. The first spreadsheet was called VisiCalc many years ago. It was built and published in the 1970s for the Apple II computer. So this is, 40 plus years ago. And and I agree. Some people say VisiCalc was the first computer program that the computer used to be only for computer whiz people, kind of nerds. It was just more like a novelty that you had at home, and you like doing things like that. But the spreadsheet really brought the computer into the office building, and it became a business tool because it allows you to do analysis. And then another popular spreadsheet that used to be very well known, I got to use this one. I didn't use VisiCalc, but Lotus 123, it was a spreadsheet, and it looks just like Excel. Just maybe the commands in different places, but they don't make it anymore, as far as I know. But it used to be very popular until Excel really took all the market. You can read this later. It's a somewhat dated article from 2014, but it caught my attention because it says it's in the New York Times, MBAs start to follow Silicon Valley in data analysis. So in many places when you do MBAs, it's not just anymore just business. They do a lot of quantitative analysis. So that's part of the objective also of this class, that you can download data and do the analysis, and you can run the data several times, and you can make a better presentation. So you can read that later. So these are the basic commands I'm going to be using between this class and the next one. Again, if you see something in capital letters, those are Excel commands. These are shortcuts. So let me see. Yeah, we'll do pivot tables next class. We'll do this next class, but I had many students who go to job interviews and they ask them, can you do pivot tables? And they say yes. And a lot of times, that's going to get you the job because they're really, really useful to do analysis. And you'll see next class, how they work. So learn those very well. Students tell me they go to the job interview. They said, yes, I can do pivot tables. So they have a computer, they sit, and they start doing data manipulation using pivot tables. And almost right there, they get the job. So let's go to Excel. Open your Excels. And again, I'm going to start very basic. So it's a spreadsheet, and it's organized in columns and rows. And the rows are always numbers, and the columns are always letters. So each one of those cells has a specific address. Like this one will be C3. You can see here, C3. So when you're doing formulas, you can click on the cell or you can type it, but that's how you give an address to something. Now, you can use the spreadsheet like a calculator. So let's say you want to do a multiplication, so you can do equals 5 times 3. And in Excel, whenever you want to input a formula, you have to the equal sign. So you put equals 5 times 3, press enter, and it'll give you 15. A better way to use Excel is if you start doing the following. We can do 5 and 3, and then you can put a formula here, so equals, and you can either use your keyboard and do 5, or you can use a mouse times 3, and then you press enter, so it's 15. And the nice thing about this is if you want to change one of those numbers, to 6, then it's going to automatically do 18. Because if you press F2, that's A1 times A2, so it's going to take whatever number you have, whatever value in those cells, and do the multiplication, addition, etc. One way to access the formula, you can double-click, or you can press F2. It's the same thing. And I like doing this because some students, they come up here and they modify the formula, but then it doesn't color them here. See, it's all black and white, but when you double click on the formula, and depends also on the Excel version you have, it colors the A1, so that's blue and that's red. And when the formula gets bigger, that's going to help you to sometimes, there's a mistake, so you can find it by color. Okay, so you can do that. Now, what makes Excel even better is that you can put labels, so numbers make sense. So let's do a market cap calculation. What is market capitalization? If you say the market cap of a company, what is that? Is the market value of the equity, okay? So, and it's equal to the number of shares you own. Well, no, because it's for the company. So it will be the total number of outstanding shares the company has times the stock price, okay? And you can see it's giving me that error because that's a mathematical formula. I have text, so it can't do the calculation, so I'll give you that error. I'm going to erase it. And then if you see a stock price is wider than the column, it doesn't fit right there. So you can either do this, just drag the A column, make it wider, or if you double click between the A and the B, you'll make it exactly the way it has to be. So let's say a company has 1 million shares outstanding, and so you can type here 1 million. And sometimes those numbers are difficult to read because of all the zeros, so you can do a couple things in Excel. You can format those, and here's a comma. So that would be 1 million. Now, if you don't want the decimals, because it doesn't make sense to have 1.3 million shares, okay, in this case, you can, we use these two icons right here. One is going to add decimals, and the other one can reduce the number of decimals. So it can be just 1 million, like that. Okay. So that's one way. Another way is, if you know you're going to be using 1 million, you can do this 1, 000, comma, and it'll format that with the comma, no decimals. So you can input the number that way. Now the stock price, let's say it's $50. And again, you can input 50 and then click on the dollar sign. Or you can do the following. Put the dollar sign from the beginning and do 50.25. And it's going to format that with the dollar sign. Okay. And if we multiply shares times the stock price, that's called market capitalization or market cap. Okay. And that will, again, that's the total value of the equity of a company. Okay. Like, what is the market cap of a company like Apple? It's like, what, $600 billion, I think. Okay, and the way you find that number is all of the outstanding shares they have times the stock price. Okay. And it's equal to what? Equals 1 million times 50.25. So stock price, the market cap will be that number. Sometimes your Excel will look at the format here and format this with dollar signs. Sometimes it doesn't do that. So you can click on the dollar sign here. So what is the market cap of this hypothetical company? It will be $50.25 million. Okay. And then what if the stock price goes up to 60? So if I replace that 60, it automatically, it's going to recalculate the market cap for you. Okay. If you double click here, it'll tell you, which cells it's using to do the calculation. You might want to do this. I don't really like it. It makes me more confused, but you can name these cells. So for instance, that's shares. So if you click here, this is called the number box. So you select the cell you want to rename, because right now, what is the name of that cell? B1. But if I rename it to shares, then when I click here, and you look here, it doesn't say B1, it says shares. And if I call this one stock price, just do a stock price, one word. You cannot leave spaces. If I double click here, why is it not shares? Some. When you rename right here, some Excels, instead of calling that B1 times B2, you will see shares times stock price, but it didn't work. I did it in my office and it worked perfect now. But I believe you can do this. I can do shares times stock price. See, and it knows that those two cells are called shares and a stock price. Press enter, I get the same number. And if I double click, instead of being B1 times B2, it's actually shares times stock price. And this works when you have a small model, but when you have a big one and you're looking for the stock price and you have maybe 40, 50 cells with equations, you have to go through the whole thing finding what a stock price is. If you use B2, it's really easy to find it because you don't have to guess. You can go to column B, row 2. So if you want to do that, that's fine. I tend not to do it, but it's an option you have. Okay. So what else? Let me see. Okay. And again, if you see that, that means the number is too large. It doesn't fit in the column. So you can double click and it'll make it exactly what it's supposed to be. So it will be 60 million. Now let me erase this one right here. Let's say that we want to do this for several companies. So I'm going to right click on one and then do insert, and it's going to insert one row. Okay? And let's call this one stock A. And then we also have a stock B. Okay? So we'll have those two. If you want to center, this is just like a PowerPoint. Just click on that one. It's going to center. And let's say the other company has, I don't know, 1.25 million shares. And the stock price is 45. So we can calculate the market cap. Now, how do you do that? Well, one way is you can do equals 1.25 million times 45. Okay? And it'll see in this case, it guessed that I want dollar signs, and it put the dollar sign. Okay? But in Excel, you can copy and paste formulas, or you can copy and paste numbers. So if you do that, you can see that little black cross when you go to the lower right box. So if you click there and you hold the mouse and you drag it, it will copy the equation. So what was the equation we input the first place? B2 times B3, or shares times market stock price. Because I copied the formula, what happened? It moved everything one column to the right. So now it's C2 times C3. And if you keep doing this again, you copy. Right now it's 0 because I have nothing here. you can see that it's asking me for something there. So you can do, I don't know, 700,000 shares. And let's do a stock price of 50. So I'll give you the market cap. So that's really useful. You can copy equations. Okay. Now, when you copy equations, sometimes you want to keep one cell constant, that it doesn't change. In this case, they're all changing. Okay. Let me think of one equation. Maybe we want, let's do an interest rate here. And let's use, let's say, let me move that one. If you do Control X, Control V, you'll cut and paste. So I'm gonna loan amount. So let's say we have $10,000. And the rate is 10%. And when you're doing percents, you can do this, 10, put the percent symbol, and then it'll be 10%. Let's call this one loan payment or interest payment. Okay, PMT, like the calculator, like Excel. So if you have a $10,000 loan, the rate is 10%. How much is the interest payment? It will be equal to the $10,000 times the 10%, right? So it will be $1,000. But let's say you're shopping for different rates. So another bank tells you 12%. Another bank tells you 13%. Okay? And you want to do the calculation. In this case, it's really simple, just 10,000 times 12%. But let's say I want to copy that equation. What's going to happen if I copy this? 0. Why? Because when you copy the equation, it will be what? B6 and B7, they have become C6 and C7. And you do want C6 to become C7 and then C8, but you want the $10,000 to be always what? B6 or constant, okay? So the way you do that, I'm going to erase this one and F2. So which is the cell that I want to keep constant? It will be B6, okay? I know many of you know this, but how do you keep something constant? You put a $sign, right? And you can put $signs before the letter and after the letter, and sometimes you only want the letter, sometimes only the number. You know, with time we'll see when you want one or the other. You may not know this. Let me erase those. But if you want to add $signs to the B6, you can press F4, and it puts the $signs. It's more efficient. And then if you cycle the F4, if I press it again, now it's only before the number, which means it will keep only the row constant, but it will let the column fluctuate. And if I do it again, now it's the B that has the $sign, which means it will be constant. It's going to be always B, but it may be B7, B8. Okay? And if you do it again, it removes the $signs. If you do it again, it's going to put both of them. So you can use F4 and quickly add the $signs. I'm going to keep both for now. And so if we copy now the equation, so now it's doing what? 10,000 times 12%. And the next one, it is doing 10,000 times 13%. Okay? So that's when you want to keep one cell constant. Now, as far as sometimes you want to select data, you need more data. Let's do the following. Let's say you want to do rows, a column of 1 through 10. So you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you only have 10, it's fine. You can do it manually. But if you want to do, and we'll do this sometimes from 1 to 1,000, it'll take you a long time if you try to type, 1 to 1,000. So what is a better way to do that? Excel has a command to do that, so you can start thinking about using equations. What if I do the following? So I begin with 1, and then I do equals that cell plus 1. What is that A11 going to be equal to? 2. And if I copy that to A12, what is that going to be equal to? 3, because now it's doing A11, which is 2 plus 1 equals 3. Okay? And if you keep doing this all the way to A19, it'll give you 10. So that's another way to do it quicker. But again, if you have to go to 1,000, then you have to do what? You have to click here and hold it for all the way to 1,000. And then you go too far, so then you have to come back. So I'm going to do it this way. You begin with 1, and we'll do it from 1 to 100. Okay? And then over here in your Home tab, there's this this one right here. It's called Fill. I can't zoom in on the menu. I can only zoom in right here on the spreadsheet area. Okay? And there's one command, or it's not a command, it's called Series. Okay? You click that one, and this is going to pop up. Okay? And then right here, it says rows or columns. So the default is rows, but I want this to be in a column. So I'm going to switch to column right here. You can have different growth rates, or linear. You can do dates, but I'm going to use linear. And then step value, I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, so the step will be 1. You can do 1, 3, 5, 7, so the step will be 2. Okay? And I want to stop at 100. And then you click OK, and you can see that automatically you have that. And that's really useful. You'll see later why. Now, let's say you want to go down and check, did it really go to 100? So how do you do that? You can move your scroll bar up and down. You can use the wheel in the mouse again. But if you use the keyboard, you can do the following. And you have those keys in your keyboards. Press the End key, let go, and then press the down arrow, and it'll go to the bottom of your series of numbers. If there's a break in between, it's going to stop at the break. Okay. If I want to go back up to the beginning, then you do what? End, and now up, and it'll take me to right there. Why didn't it go all the way to A1? Because there's a break right here. It's an empty cell, so it's going to stop right there. Okay. Let me go Control End again. Sometimes you get lost in your spreadsheet and you want to go back all the way to the beginning. If you do Control Home, then it'll take you to A1 every single time. So maybe in your notebooks, End, down arrow, End, up. You can also do End right, End left, Control Home, and that's just a way to move around the spreadsheet. Okay? Now, sometimes you want to select cells so you can copy those. So how do you select? You can click on the one, and then you hold your left button, and then you start going all the way down. But again, it takes a long time. And then if you want to copy that to the right, how can you do that? You can do Control C, and then you can do Control V. Okay? Or you can go down there, and you click right there when you see that black cross, hold it, drag it to the right, maybe one, and it'll copy the whole thing. And that's more, sometimes that works better. But you saw that it took me a long time to highlight the column, so I'm going to show you how to highlight things. I'm going to highlight that the numbers in the B column. So do it with me. You press, and sometimes I do it, so shift, and then you hold it, and then you press the end key, and you let go, and then you press the down arrow, and it automatically selects all the way to the bottom. Okay, let me, that's if you're going down. So you shift, and then you hold the key, and then you press the end key, you let go, just one click, and then down. Okay. And again, this will become useful later. Now, if you're at the bottom, how do you select the entire 100 numbers? If I do shift, hold it, and one click, now I'm going up, so you press the up arrow, and it selects the whole thing. Okay. So kind of practice doing it, a few times. What if you want to select both columns? How will you do that using the keys, the keyboard? Okay, and you hold it, right? Well, see, if I do shift and hold it, and I do one to the right, and then I do one down, it's only going to do one row. So if you want to do all of them, then you have to do one. And then down arrow, and it selects both of them. So that's a way to. Now, this is a table with 2 columns and 100 rows. So I show you how to select the table. Again, shift to the right, and then end, and you hold shift. You don't let go, and then down, and it's going to select the whole table. If you have 3, 4, 5 columns, just select the 5 columns, and then you can go to the bottom. Or when you have tables, if you do the following commands: Control, and I think you hold all of them, shift, and then the number 8. It selects a table in one step. Control plus shift plus 8. So try that. You can be anywhere in your table, like right there. You do Control, Shift, and then number 8, and it selects the whole table for you. Okay. And once you have that, you can do Control C, and you can see that it puts that dash line. It's moving, and then you can come here and paste, so you copy your table, in one step. All right. All right. Let's see what else. Before I continue with other commands, this works like a PowerPoint too. If you highlight that row, you can center the numbers. You can change the font color, the size. I'm going to skip that. You guys should know how to do that. Okay, let's input an equation here. I'm going to show you how to copy formulas also quickly. So let's say you want to add those numbers, the 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So you will do what? Equals 1 plus the next one plus that one plus that one, and that'll be equal to 4, obviously. Okay. Or you can use this Excel command, and you may know this one. It's called S-U-M, sum. So in Excel, when you want to input an equation, it's a built-in command. You always begin with the equal sign like any other equation. You type the command, in this case, sum, and then you always have to open a parenthesis. And you want to add which numbers? This one's the ones. So you can, with your mouse, you can highlight those 4 cells, and then you always have to close the parenthesis. And then you press enter. And you also get the number 4, obviously. Now, what if you want to do that for every row? You want to copy that equation. You can see that little black cross again. So if you hold the left button in your mouse, you can drag that equation, that formula, and it'll start copying the formula. If I double click here, now it's doing the next row, and the next one will be the next row, etc. But again, if you have 100 rows, it takes a long time. So to copy formula, you can do this. You also find that lower right corner, and when you see that black cross, you double click on your left button in the mouse. And it copies the equation all the way to the bottom. Let me show you. If I go to the bottom here and double click here, see, it's the same equation, but it's copied all the way to the bottom. Okay? So when you double click, it copies all the way to the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing here. If I double click there, it copies the equation. So you can see it's doing sum of A11 through D11, and the next one will be 12 through 12, etc. Okay? Since I have an Excel formula, a built-in, I do this from time to time. For those of you who go a little slower, there's a command called formula text. And then it's a command, so you open the parenthesis, and I'm going to click on that cell, close the parenthesis, and what it does, it puts the equation you're using right there. So you'll see me doing that from time to time, and if I forget, remind me. So if you can't go as fast as everyone else, you can have the equation right there. Okay? And if that's an equation, so if I copy it, you can see that it's going to give you the equation for every single row. Let's see. Questions so far? No, this is just practice. Right? All right. So let's do the following. What's a minute? 226. Let's go get some data so we can put it into Excel and start using more calculations. Open a browser. And we'll be using this website very often. It's finance.yahoo.com. And up here you can type the name of a company, or if you know the symbol, you can type the symbol. Same thing when you come to class, open Excel, and then open Finance Yahoo. We may not use it, but you can see that this one is doing something, thinking, the computer. So if you can do that ahead of time when we need. Okay. So I'm going to use Netflix. All of you know that company. And the stock symbol is NFLX, or you can type Netflix and it'll give you different options. Okay. All of these ones right here, Netflix with all of those numbers, those are the stock options. So we'll do a stock options later. So we'll use all of that. But the one we want is this one, Netflix. It trades in the NASDAQ. So if you click there, it gives you the stock price. So today it's 132. And let me zoom in here real quick. So you can see this number right here. Market cap. What is that? Market capitalization. And it's almost $57 billion. How do they calculate that number? Again, they take the stock price, which is 132.2, times the number of outstanding shares the company has. Now, the number of outstanding shares, it's not right here in this page. In Finance Yahoo, you have to go to, if you go to statistics right here, it is right here. Shares outstanding, 429 million. So if you multiply the stock price times that number, it'll give you the total market capitalization of the company. In essence, what it means is if you want to be the sole owner of Netflix, only one shareholder, because you're going to buy all of the equity, you will have to pay, how much was it? It was $57 billion. And that will make you the sole owner of the company. Okay? There's a few people who can do that maybe, but right. So now what I want to do with Netflix is do some analysis. So if you go here to historical data, click on historical data, and you can see a lot of numbers here. This is the historical stock price data of the company. And right here in time period, it is from it's about 1 year of historical data. So let's make it 5 years. So if you click here, let's go back all the way back to 2010. So 1/18/2010 to 1/18/2017. And then you click done here. And then you have to click apply. And it's going to go find all the data and put it on the screen. Not in one page. It's going to be over several pages. Okay. Now, something else you can do in Finance Yahoo, and we'll be using this option later, is the frequency. You want the historical data on a daily basis, and they also offer weekly, and they offer monthly. Let's use daily, which is the default right there. So you click apply, and then you click download data right here, and it will open Excel, and it's going to put all of the data. It depends on your browser, but in mine, it put right here this table, this file. So if I click on that one, it's going to open. And so you can see here all of the dates. Okay. How many rows of data do I have? If I go all the way to the bottom, I can see how many of them. How do we go to the bottom quickly? Without using the scroll bar. Well, that's if you want to highlight, select the data. But if you only want to go to the bottom, and then down, and it went all the way to, why not 1/18? Because we had 1/18/2010. My guess is the 18 was a Sunday, so there was no trading on a Sunday. So it gives you whatever the closest trading day to the day that the range. Okay, and that will be how many rows? It is 1,763. Okay, so this is the date. Now, some of these are very obvious, but when you download data, it's going to give you all of this right here. What is open? So when the market opens, that's what the price is. High, during the trading day, that was the peak price. Okay. Low, obviously the lowest price during the day. Close will be what? When the market closes, right? And then volume is what? How many shares were traded, exchange hands during the day, okay? For those of you, if you want to add some comments, because when you study later, if you click on that cell, volume, and then you go to review right here, you click new comment, and then you can say, so what is volume? Shares exchange during trading day. Okay. And then you click somewhere else, but you have the comment right there. So when you review later at home, if you scroll over with your mouse, it'll give you the comment. And it's kind of difficult to see on the screen, but you can see it in your computers. See that little red triangle? That means that you have a comment. So you can either click on the cell, or you can scroll over with your mouse, and you can see that comment. So, and you can do that all the time we're doing in class, so you can remember things we do. Okay. And then we have something else here. ADJ close, and that stands for adjusted close. Okay. Does anybody know what adjusted close is? It's the closing price adjusted for something. What do you think that is? Adjusted for what? No? That's a good guess, but not. And I'm going to put a comment here. But it's adjusted for dividends and stock splits. What is a stock split? No, they actually, when they split the stock, they don't issue. Well, they do. They do. Well, if I tell you what exactly that means, if you look at the closing price here and the adjusted closing price, they're the same. That means that on that given day, no stock splits, no dividends, so they're going to be exactly the same. Okay, but let me scroll, and okay, if you go to, let me tell you the date, about 7/13/2015. Look at the closing price right here. This one. Closing price 707, adjusted close 101. Why the difference? Because they split the stock. And I don't remember when they split the stock, but it was around that time. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back a little. Do you see that? You can read here what those columns are. So something you can do in Excel. Do Control Home, so you can go all the way to the beginning of the file. Okay. And then we're going to do the following. You go to View, and then this option, Freeze. And there are several options. The one I'm going to be using right now is the second one, Freeze the top row. Okay. So once you click that, look what happens when I scroll down. Those are going to stay in place. So you can always read what the headline in the column is, and then you remember what is that those numbers represent. So it was in 2013, right? That we. Yeah. So this is close, adjusted close, the same number. It's right here. See that? In 7/15. Close price 98, adjusted close 98, but the day before, close 702, adjusted $100. So that's when the stock split happened. So this is what they do. Sometimes the stock prices get to be too expensive, because that's a lot of money to pay for the stock, $700. So the volume in the stock is going to decrease when they get too expensive. Not too many people can buy the stock at those prices. So some companies split the stock. And this is the way it works. Let's say that you own 100 shares of a company. It can be any company. And the stock price equals $100. Okay. So how much money you have invested in this stock? $10,000. Okay. But then the company does a 2-for-1 split. 2-for-1 means they're going to cut the stock price in half. So the new stock price is going to be 50. But if you own 100 shares, now how many do you own? $200 shares. So they do issue new shares. But they also cut the stock price in half. So your overall wealth remains the same, but now the stock price is cheaper. They don't dilute ownership. Because let's say that 100 shares represent 50% of the company. So they issue more. So proportionally, you still own 50% of the company. And they're not diluting any ownership or value or anything. They're just cutting the price from 100 to 50. But if they don't give you additional shares, what's going to happen to your investment? It's going to be cut in half. So to avoid that, they issue proportionally the same proportion. Okay. So if I go back to Netflix, what is the stock price the day of the split? 700, right? So what is the split in this case? It's not a 2-for-1. What kind of split is this one? See, if I do the following, equals, and I'm on cell H383, right? If I do the closing price, and I divide that by the new stock price, equals 7. So Netflix did a 7-for-1 split on that day. So the following day, the stock was trading for 1/7 of what it was trading the day before. But what happened to every owner of the stock? They receive 7 times more shares. So if you own 100, now you own how many? 700. 1,000, 7,000. So they do splits. So that's why in Finance Yahoo and other databases, they give you both the closing price and the adjusted close. Now, whenever you guys do analysis for my class, or in general, anywhere else, you have to use the adjusted close price when you do your analysis. And never use the closing price. We're going to do a graph of the stock price. And the stock prices fluctuate. But when they do a split, what's going to happen on that day? What is the stock price going to do? It's going to fall from 700 to 100. So if you don't know that they split the stock, what is going to be your assumption? Something happened to the stock on that day and it crashed. No, it's just they split the stock. So what they do when they split, look at the adjusted closing price the days before the split. They also go and split all of those. So that that's why it's called adjusted stock price. So you can have a nice graph over time. Okay? So that's why we use the adjusted closing price and not the closing price. Now, we're going to save this file because we're going to use it all this class and the next class. But when you downloaded your file from Finance Yahoo, do the following. Do File, Save As, and then choose a folder in your computers or in your USB. Let's save it before we forget. And look at the type of the file. It's a CSV, which stands for comma separated value. So what you have in Excel right now is not an Excel file, it is a text file. And if you open this file with Word, you're going to see every number with a comma. That's what they're called CSV. The problem with using that file is that all the equations, all the stuff we do is not going to be saved. All of that is going to be erased because it's a text file. So what you have to do is click here and select the very top option so it can be saved as an Excel file, so equations, graphs. Okay. And file name, I'm going to call this one Netflix. Like that. Okay. So now it's a Now, let's do some calculations. Since we have daily data, we're going to calculate the daily return for the stock. So it's right there. And how do you calculate a return? It can be daily, monthly, weekly, annual. But what is the equation for calculating in this case, a daily return? How do you calculate the percentage gain you have on a weekly basis, monthly basis, daily basis? So it equals the new number minus the old number, and then you divide that by the old number, final minus initial over the initial. So how will you implement that in Excel? It's an equation, so you have to do the equal sign. And then in this case, I'm going to open a parenthesis. And which one is the final number? It will be this one, because that's the most recent date, and then minus the day before, that will be your initial, close the parenthesis, over the initial. So it is G2 minus G3 and all of that over G3. Press enter, and it's going to give you that number. Okay? And that's a fraction. What if you want to express that as a percent? How do you turn that into a percent? In your home tab, you click on percent, and it will be a loss of 1%. It's not 1% exactly, so you can add decimals in this case with this one, a couple of decimals. It's 0.61 negative. Okay? And then how will you calculate that for every single day in your data? Double click, and boom, done. Let me show you an Excel formula. Do I have time? Yep. And we'll be calculating a return as well. Excel has a built-in function to calculate returns. And there's a couple ways to do this. The function is called rate. So I'm going to do equals, type rate, okay? And then you open the parentheses. And I can zoom in, so you're going to have to look at this in your screens. Excel is giving you the inputs of the syntax. So what is it asking you first? It's NPER. What does that stand for? And I'm asking you, because it's like a financial calculator. It's number of periods in this case. Okay. Now I want to do daily returns. So how many periods? It will be 1 day. So I'm going to put 1 right there. Okay. Sometimes you can have the 1 in a cell and click on the cell, but in this case, we'll just put the 1. And then what do you have to put after the 1? Well, before you put the payment, you have to put a comma. It's right there. If you see in your screen, it's asking for a comma. Payment. Do we have payments in this case? There's no payment. There's just a final and initial value, so the payment equals 0. Right? And then you put a comma, and then what is it asking you for? Present value. And so what is the present value in this case? Which one? The 132 or the 133? Present value is always today or before, so it will be the 133. But what do you remember about your financial calculators? How do you input present values? The negative. Like if you go to the bank and you make a deposit, what do you do with that number? You have to input that as a negative. So I'm going to put a negative there. And then click on the 133, right? And then put a comma, because that's what it's asking me for. And then it's asking me for the future value. So you click on that future value. Now, do you see that future value? It's in brackets. Same as type and guess. When you see brackets, it means that it's optional. It doesn't need those numbers to do the calculation. Now, I do need the future value in this case, so we input the future value, but I don't need type and guess. I'll tell you what those are later, so you can ignore those and just close the parentheses. And again, it gives me negative 1%, add a couple decimals, and it's right there. Okay, so that will be the equation. And then again, I'm going to copy this just for having that. And all the numbers are exactly the same. Okay. And I'll do one last equation so I can take attendance. We're going to be using this to do a lot of calculations next class. And they're going to be called descriptive statistics. And when you do analysis in finance, instead of doing it on the stock price, we do that on the return. And that's why we calculated those, and I'll tell you why next class. And there are many descriptive statistics. What is the most common one? The mean, right? So let's calculate the mean of the daily returns. And the equation for the mean in Excel, you always begin with an equal sign, and it's average. It's not mean, it's average. And then you always need what? A parenthesis, and then you can use either H or I column. It doesn't really matter because the numbers are exactly the same. I'll be using column H. So look at the screen. The way you select is you can highlight that. Again, it's a lot of numbers. So instead of doing that, I'm going to click on the 0.61. And then how do you select an entire column? You do Shift, you hold it, and then End, and then you go to the bottom. And something happened there because it didn't. Oh, I had a 7 in there because of the stock split, so it stopped right there. So I'm gonna have to go back and fix it. So let me do Escape, go to the bottom here, delete the number 7, and then double click it again. So it can do all the way to the bottom. And I will make mistakes like this a lot of times. In fact, if we go all the way to the bottom, see those right there? Why is that happening? If I double click, it needs that number to be able to do the calculation. Because right now it's doing what? It's dividing by 0, and that's what it's giving you that error, division by 0, and you can't do that. So I'm going to delete that one. And this one is giving me that error. So again, it needs a number there. It's empty, so it can't calculate it. So I'm going to delete that one. Yeah, I delete the 7, and then double click, and then go to the bottom. So now let's do the mean. So equals average, open the parentheses, select the 0.61, and then Shift and one click only down, close the parentheses. So what is the daily return for Netflix in the last 7 years? It's 0.23%. So if you had invested in Netflix 7 years ago on a daily basis, on average, you will have made 0.23%, which seems like a small number, but daily. So it's actually a pretty good return. Okay, and then save it. Don't forget to save it. Okay. Jorge Cantu. Carlos Cruz. Carlos. Marco Cuellar. Ashley De Leon.